Most of the time, cartoons like to have this happy, upbeat presentation on the surface, but just under that surface of cartoons exist characters that can only be described as pure nightmare fuel, and are only there to wreak havoc in their shows, and are just some of the most pure evil, pure sinister characters to ever be put on screen. They exude an aura that can't be described with words, but can only be described with pure feelings like pure fear, panic, and a flight or fight reaction when you see something that seems inescapable. And these characters are so hard to come by in any form of media. Like, a lot of horror movies can't give you this feeling and just come off kind of goofy with their villains trying to be sinister, but somehow cartoons can create these sinister characters more evil than the actual horror characters by using animation to create these otherworldly creatures that feel like they're coming straight out of nightmares onto the screen, that live action just can't give you with their limitations. But with horror and animation, the terrifying creations are limitless. And today I'm going to be talking about a certain 3 cartoon villains and cartoon characters who represent the pure embodiment of nightmare fuel the most, that are just terror incarnate and will just give you nightmares from just how amazingly terrifying they are. Starting off with one of the most iconic nightmare fuel characters ever, the Lich, who is one of the most terrifying characters that we ever put on screen and in fiction, who came out one of the biggest cartoons of our time, Adventure Time, a show about Finn the Human and Jake the Dog. What made him so terrifying was that there was such a sudden change in tone shift in Adventure Time, because in season 1, the show was mainly goofy episodes and acid trip feeling episodes, but the one episode in season 2 of Adventure Time that changed everything was an episode titled Mortal Folly. And if you don't know what folly means, this is the definition: a criminally or tragically foolish actions or conduct. So just by the title alone, you can tell that this episode was a very different tone shift from what all the previous episodes were about, and it introduced one of the most nightmare-fueling characters ever, the Lich. Now, just by his appearance alone, you can tell that this guy feels otherworldly from the characters that we got in Adventure Time, and feels like straight nightmare fuel incarnate. This guy has his skin falling off. This guy looks like a literal demon. This guy is something that you only see in your nightmares. And I remember watching the first episode with the Lich and all the future episodes that he was in as a kid. And watching it as a kid gave me nightmares by just how evil and how sinister he was, and his whole entire aura felt like there was just something awry and something going wrong that just triggered her flight or fight reaction that made him seem so terrifying. And watching this now grown up is a feeling that can't be described as anything else but just pure horrifying. Now, if you're not too familiar with the Lich, his backstory is that he is the cause of the nuclear apocalypse in the Adventure Time universe that ultimately leads to the end of the human race. That's why the only character in the show that is a human is our main character, Finn. And when it comes to his powers are no joke on how strong he is. And besides him being so strong enough that he causes a nuclear apocalypse that ends all of humanity, he has some other crazy powers that feel just demonic. Like, if you just even glimpse at him, he can hypnotize you just by looking at you and puts you into a trance that makes you feel cold, like you're freezing in Antarctica, and the only warmth you can feel is his voice, and whatever he says is a command while in his presence, which makes every word he says feel like an impactful one and feel like a word you can't defy. Like in one of the most iconic Adventure Time episodes when he says, "Fall." Not to mention, he drops some of the coldest lines in Adventure Time and just in all of writing history, like my personal favorite line, "You are strong, child, but I am beyond strength. I am the end." And so many other cool ones that if you just watch the show, you'll know that there's so many great lines with them. Not to mention, his voice actor is amazing in this and just makes it really feel how commanding and booming his voice is. And if somehow you even find a way to kill him, his soul will just go into another nearby body to be his new vessel to do his evil doings, making you wonder if his current body that you see for most of the show is even his real one. Like in the episode when he took over Princess's bubblegum body, and we then got some of the most craziest body horror and nightmare-inducing scenes till this day. And to this day, I consider one of the most terrifying things to be put on screen with how monstrous they make this episode feel, of how bubblegum is just slowly decaying her skin, everything is just mutating, her skin is turning purple, and it's honestly just horrifying to watch this happen, where he just turns a simple looking candy person into just a complete monster. And he's not just wreaking havoc in the real world, he's also wreaking havoc in people's dreams. Like in the one episode where he kind of just incepts Finn's mind by putting a seed and an idea that he has to stop the Lich from doing a certain thing, and kind of leads him down this path to just further help him do his evil doings. Kind of how, like Inception, they put a seed into someone's mind to believe that they're doing the right thing and believe that they're doing it for their own reasons, while ultimately Finn the human is just following the orders and evil building of the mastermind, the Lich. So no matter what you try to do, no matter how far you try to run, he will always be there to wreak havoc across the lands and even in other dimensions, because he is evil incarnate and he is unescapable. Now, even though the Lich was a literal incarnate of evil, let's talk about a character who is actually a demon. The one and only alastor, the radio demon, who lives in literal hell, coming from a really popular new show, Hazbin Hotel, which if you haven't watched it, go watch it. It's an amazing show that you should watch, especially when you have this pure evil character who makes other demons look like saints. Now, the reason alastor is called the radio demon, besides his cool voice, is that back in the day, every time he would kill his victims, he would broadcast their screams onto the radio for everyone to hear. And there wasn't a second that would go by where there wasn't a new voice on the radio. And the voices were not just some random people in hell, they were literal top-notch demons who he made suffer. And if you weren't one of his victims that didn't end up on the radio for him to torture and ultimately kill, you had a far worse fate, because you would ultimately make a deal with him. And like how the saying goes, you never make a deal with the devil. Because if you did make a deal with him, it would cost you your literal soul. And you would have to do alastor's bidding for the rest of your eternal life in hell. And alastor would eventually become so powerful that he'd become an overlord of hell, which means you're one of the strongest demons in hell. And even though he reached this high level of power, he ultimately went into hiding. And at this point of the show, we don't know why he went into hiding. It's still pretty much unknown. But he went into hiding for years. But when he finally decided to come back from his hiding, he decided to hide his dark evil doings under this suited up demon helping out an innocent little girl with her new hotel. And most of his backstory that I just said to you is just stories passed along, and no one knows how truly powerful he actually is. And also no one knows how he got so powerful in the first place, or even why he does what he does. But he always has a plan that will ultimately benefit him, where we see him trying to build up this ultimate plan that we as the viewer don't know yet, but we can only fear what that plan is. And even though he's not doing his evil doings like he used to do out in the open, we still see how much he's feared by other demons and how dangerous he used to be before he decided to help start a new hotel, by sometimes seeing these lapses in his mind where he goes full demon mode and he looks like how he used to be back in the day with his horns fully grown out, and him going into this monster type of mode by growing 12 feet tall with horns and fangs and longer teeth and claws, and just seems flat out insane and just one Mark Hamill laugh away from having a full Joker manic episode. But we know he has a plan, and a demon with a plan is something everyone should be afraid of. Not to mention, we got a hint to what that plan might be, because he is ultimately trying to pay back a debt from an unknown person, and the demon who is backed into a corner is a recipe for disaster, because we know from everything that we've seen, alastor would try to do anything to get out of that debt. And we see how desperate he is to get out of that debt when we see him go full-on insane mode at the end of the season, trying to scramble out a plan to find out a way of his current deal. And hopefully we see this plan unfold in season 2, because in season 1, he's still very much a mystery and is building up his power by having the daughter of Lucifer owe him a favor, and a favor from the daughter of Lucifer is something you wouldn't want in the hands of a demon like alastor, who we have seen is just pure evil. Now, even though we talked about a demon who is building up their power, let's talk about a character who is what you would actually call pure evil and can only be described as an actual devil, or maybe even something more sinister than that. A creature that doesn't have a name, but the few who have seen it and lived to tell the tale call it by one thing: the beast.
No, there is only me. There is only my way. There is only the forest, and there is only surrender.
Now, this creature comes from one of the greatest shows of all time, and one of my personal favorite shows, Over the Garden Wall. Now, to fully describe the full scope of the creature called the Beast, I will be getting to spoilers, so if you haven't, go watch it. It's only 10 episodes. But spoilers ahead. So the main characters of the show are lost in a forest, and there is a creature that wanders the woods called the Beast. And the only one who warned the main characters about this beast is a man called the Woodsman, who chops down trees. And as the show goes along, we find out that they're not just lost in a forest, they're actually lost in purgatory, a state between life and death. And they're trying to get back to the real bodies in the real world. And it just so happens that this purgatory just happens to look like a forest. But ultimately, they're trying to escape this forest and get back into the real world and back into their bodies. But if there's something trying to pull them back to their bodies, there also has to be something pulling them away from their bodies. And the thing that is pulling them away from their bodies is a creature known as the Beast. And he is what most people speculate to be the devil of purgatory. And the reason why he's considered the devil of this purgatory is that he makes lost souls deals. And if you haven't learned already from this video, you don't make deals with the devil. He tricks you into thinking he is trying to help you, but ultimately turns you into another tree in his forest, which already tells the audience that all of these trees that these main characters have been walking past, they're not just trees. They're millions of souls that the beast had made deals with that ultimately got turned into trees, creating an endless forest that seems to be going on for miles. Which means that there's millions and millions of souls that got lost in purgatory and never made it back to their bodies. And what makes it worse is that the only person that the beast has ever left alive is the woodsman, who is chopping down these trees and is putting a final nail in the coffin of these lost souls. But the worst thing is that the woodsman also made a deal with the beast, that the only way to keep his daughter's soul alive is to cut down these trees and feed the wood into his lantern, and that lantern contains his own daughter's soul. Which means he's killing millions and millions innocent lost souls to ultimately to save one person's life and just to keep one soul ignited. But what makes it worse is that even this woodsman doesn't know by keeping this one soul alive, he's killing thousands or maybe even millions. It's never said how many trees this woodsman has cut down. And to put a cherry on top, what makes it worse is that the beast finally confronts the woodsman and says the daughter's soul was never in that lantern. And finally tells him that all those trees you were cutting down were lost souls that he turned into trees. And asks him,
Woodsman, I knew you would come. I have something for you. Why, I've given you another Edelwood. He will burn nicely in the lantern. You've been grinding up lost souls for years. And would it have mattered? Would you have just let your daughter's spirit burn out forever? Feed the lantern.
And even the woodsman wants to believe that he would have stopped cutting down those trees. But even this beast knows that when it comes to people's ambitions, no one would have stopped. Which just makes the beast truly horrifying, because throughout the series we see that the beast likes to play on these characters' insecurities and these characters' flaws to just try to get what he wants. And what he ultimately wants is just more souls in his forest. And we see that when he almost turns one of our main characters into a tree in his endless forest. And towards the end of the show, we get a glimpse to see what this beast actually looks like after him being in the shadows for all this time. And when we finally see him, his look can only be described as lost souls formed into one Lovecraftian being. Something otherworldly like, something that you haven't seen, something just forming the shape of a monster or forming a shape of a familiar figure you've seen. But ultimately just being something otherworldly that we just try to grasp on what it looks like. And the worst part of it is that our characters don't defeat the beast. He just escapes into the woods and their souls go back into their bodies. So even though our main characters get a happy ending, the beast never got defeated, and he will always be out there looking for new souls, create new trees in this endless forest. And even though some survive the woods, most of them get lost there forever, to either be lost souls or to be new trees. Now these characters strike fear into any watcher of any age and just show us how scary animation can be when creating these otherworldly type of monsters that can only be described as sinister, that live action can't deliver to us, which really makes me appreciate how amazing animation can be and how amazing animation just is in general. But what is ultimately more terrifying than these characters is the amount of subscribers I have. It's horrifying low, so if you want to make it less sinister, please subscribe to this channel because 99% of the people who watch me aren't subscribed. So don't be that 99%, be that 1%, and let me know your personal favorite pure evil villain in cartoons or just in any form of media. It can be other movies, it can be live action movies. I would love to know some of your personal favorite sinister evil villains who are just flat out pure evil. And if you like this video, go watch my other video where I talk about other pure evil villains, where I talk about more comic book characters like pure evil villains like the Joker. So if you like this video, go watch that other one. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I hope to see you guys next time. Later, hater. Peace.